We started fostering about 16 years ago. We had an individual come to our church and just kind of lay out the need.
And one of the things she said, as you can see, we're not youngsters, she said, don't let your age be a hindrance to doing foster care. And I think that spoke to us profoundly.
And so we had been talking about it for a while, and we finally decided that morning, it's like, maybe we need to do this. Maybe we just need to sign the dotted line here and see where this goes.
I thought foster care was just opening our homes to children in need. My mind was opened up to there is a reason that these children are in need. They have suffered very difficult backgrounds. We had recently read a particular scripture verse that said, true religion is this, taking care of widows and orphans. And so we decided, well, that would be an excellent way of serving the Lord.
And so that's how it all started. You just got to get over that initial hurdle. Just get over the idea that, can I or can't I? And realize that you can, because you're going to have challenges, you're going to have things that come up that you're not anticipating, but that's just the way life is.
The first placement we got was Tacoma, who we did not know was ADHD and on the autism scale and numerous other things. He never stopped moving. And he would get into like that game cabinet over there and take out every marble and every Scrabble letter and everything. We had a son, Caleb, who was 17 or 18 at the time, and Caleb would just very calmly come behind him, move him to something else, pick up the mess. So our older kids were a huge help. We have just had Mother's Day a couple of days ago, and I came downstairs on Sunday morning to find a bouquet of carnations and a card, a really sweet card. And in the card, he wrote, "Thank you so much for everything that you do for us." And he said, "All my coworkers wish they had a mom like I have."
From being now in position of being one of the county commissioners, I think one of the first things that I would say is that government is not the answer. It's up to us as individuals to realize that we're part of the answer. We have resources and the government has resources, but when we combine those resources, that's when we can begin to make a bigger difference. You go into this situation sometimes and you think that you're going to be the one who's doing all the helping, who's going to be all the blessing. And in reality, it's quite the opposite, because they end up blessing you more than you feel like you're blessing to them. And I've had people say, well, where would these guys be, if you guys didn't step up and do this? And I was like, where would we be if we didn't have them in our homes? I can't imagine our family without these guys. Now, years later, it's just been a huge blessing to have us be a part of their lives and for them to be a part of our lives.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me here today. As Pastor John mentioned, I'm with Project 127, and we get our name from James 1:27, which says that religion that God finds pure and faultless is to look after orphans and widows in their distress. We actually did 5 of these videos with 5 different foster families in our community. It's part of the Fostering Hope campaign. But I show this one in churches because I think Craig and Leanne did a fabulous job of speaking to Christians about what God has called us to do. And I didn't even coach Leanne. I was sitting there when she just started quoting James 1:27, and I thought, this is the keeper line right here. This is for the churches. Child abuse is a difficult situation, and I don't know anyone who is more of an orphan today than a child who's been abused or neglected, removed from their home and placed in foster care. They certainly are the orphans of today. But the church is bigger. When I was here last time, I think I told you that we have about 45 kids on average in foster care in any given month. These are just kids in traditional foster care. That doesn't count the kids that are living with their family or other grandparents. And we have 16 foster homes in Delta County. I think I shared last time how many churches we have in Delta. Pastor John can't answer this question. Does anybody know how many churches we have in Delta County? Any idea? Any guess? 12. Not even close. Very close. 48. So we have 48 churches in Delta County. If every church just had one foster family that stepped up and that church wrapped around that family, we would have more than enough. And not only to care for the kids, but to bring them into church and to lead them to the Lord. So if any of you here have been thinking about that, if God's been talking to you about that, if something in this video has spoke to you, I will have a table afterwards. I'd love to talk with you. We have 4 different info sessions throughout the summer. They're all virtual. You can just do them from the comfort of your own home and learn more about the process to become a foster parent. But for those of you who aren't feeling called to foster, and I would say most of us in this room aren't called to actually foster, we don't get a pass on James 1:27. It was 1 Peter 4:10 that says we should use the gifts God has given us, excuse me, to serve others. So whatever gift you had, it can be used. There's a man who is in the Aurora church where Project 127 was started 22 years ago. To this day, he still mows the yard of every foster family in his church. And I think any of us here over the age of 12 can certainly do that. If you have a foster family in your home, there are ways we can help you support them. We have a 4-hour training that's part of the whole foster care training where the foster family can bring their support team in and they learn about what do foster families need. But even if you don't personally know a single foster family or a foster child, there are ways you can help through CarePortal. And CarePortal is an online portal where caseworkers that work with these kids can put a need in the portal and it automatically goes out to all of the people, the churches and the individuals who have signed up, and you immediately know there's a need. If you want to meet that need, you click on it, and then everybody else knows that need has been met. I'll give you a couple examples. The very first one we had, we started CarePortal in end of July last year, and the very first request was for grandparents who just took their 5 grandkids in. So they went from a family of 2 to a family of 7, literally overnight. They couldn't even fit everybody in one car. When they went somewhere, they had to pile up into 2 different cars. And they had so many things they didn't need, all of the baby gear, the car seats, the back-to-school clothes, and school supplies. So we put it in, and within about a week, we had gotten a total of $350 of gift cards for them to be able to go and purchase the items they needed for their kids, just like that. There was a young mom who had, her kids had been in foster care for about 1.5 years. She had been clean and sober for 1 year. She was working her treatment plan. She was gainfully employed, and she was about to get her kids back. And so she had to rent an apartment large enough for all of them. And by the time she did that, she didn't have enough money to get her to her next paycheck to cover food. So we had a church who had a food bank, and they brought 3 or 4 boxes of food to her, and several other people that went in and bought gift cards at City Market to help her. So very tangible ways. Anybody can do it with as little as $10 or a caring heart. There are things that you can do to serve these kids and these families. And I just so appreciate your pastor and his love for the community and for children. And he was the first one to invite me to come speak at your church last year on Mother's Day, invited me back a second time without me having to ask him. I was just some stranger that moved here from Grand Junction about 1.5 years ago. I appreciate the heart that he has for this community, and I thank him for giving me this opportunity.
Janet is one of our new city councilors here in Delta. So I got to tell you, isn't that exciting? Praise God. All right, Shannon and Craig, would you come up here and give me a hand? I'm going to have these guys set up some chairs. We're going to do, today what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a panel. And we're going to bring up Karen, go ahead and come up. Leanne, come on up. Kirsten, come on up. There are now places to sit. And we're going to do a little bit of a panel. Today, instead of giving a sermon, why am I talking into this? I have so many mics. I don't know where I am. Like this one is, no, it's the one on my face. We're going to share these because this one's hard to share. We're going to kind of have a couple of mics out here. Nope, that one's mine. You're going to have to scoot down one, and I'm going to sit here.
Where's he sitting?
I'm sitting here. There we go. All right. I'm going to be down here. So today, instead of preaching a sermon, I'm just going to ask questions. It's going to be great, and I'm going to try to I'm going to try to manage time. Keep this moving along. And that took a while. I mean, yes, should we laugh? I don't know if we should laugh. But what I'd like to do, all these couples and all these people have been involved. Sorry, I don't know. That's why hosting things like this isn't really my job, but everybody here has been a part, very intimately involved in adoption and fostering, and I know we have some families in our church that are very involved in this so difficult work of fostering and working to adopt, and we have families whose in this church whose family not in this church is involved in the process, and so we're going to be talking about something that's near and dear to many people in this room, and that I hope will become near and dear to everyone in this room in one way or another. But I think that there's probably a lot of you who know some of these stories already, and some of you who don't. And so what I want to do today is just ask some questions and have these lovely folks share with us their testimonies and experiences for the purpose that maybe you're here today and you've never even thought about or considered something like this, and maybe you would, and maybe you're here and you have been praying and considering, and maybe you even think that's something that I would do if I knew I could. And I wonder if you knew that you had a church family that was completely behind you, completely there for you, and no matter what happens would be there to help with whatever, if that would make any difference. And so that's some of all what we want to talk about. So I'm going to start here. We're going to start down on that end with Shannon and Karen. Tell us a little bit about your family. Maybe we're going to have everybody touch on this. Tell us a little bit about your family and how long you've been fostering or involved in adoption.
So Shannon Brewer, my wife Karen, we first got involved with adoption when we adopted our daughter, Aubrey. She was 15 months old when we picked her up on June 15th of 2007. I always tell the story, we walked into Denver International Airport with 4 children and walked out with 5, and it felt a little bit illegal. But that was the beginning of our process. I mean, the story goes way back before that, but as far as adoption, we actually kind of started talking about adoption in 2003, and then again, she started talking about it a long time before I did. Before we actually got married, she said, "I want to have a large family," and I'm like, "Cool. Large families are great." I had one brother, and so anything more than 2 of us was a large family, right? So we had 3 kids at home, and she says, let's start talking about adoption. And I was like, why would we do that? We can make kids. We don't need. I didn't get it. But long story short, and I told John, I said, he's not the one you got to worry about talking too much this morning. But long story short, we ended up going to a seminar in Colorado Springs in 2003, and it just totally woke my eyes up to the story of adoption and why you adopt. It's not for bringing another kid into the house. It's to give them another chance. And so we did that, adopted Aubrey in 2007, and then in 2018, we had made the decision to do foster care. And so On September 11th of 2018, we signed our final contract with Ariel in Grand Junction, and that night we picked up 4 kiddos under 6 years old and brought them to our house, and so we fostered the Fab Four.
The Fab Four.
Yeah. We had all 4 of them for over almost a year, and then 2 of them got farmed out, and we ended up with the other 2 for almost another year, a little over a year after that. They left, and we have had several other foster kids in the home after that. So it's just an opportunity to give a kid another chance. That's really what it's boiled down to for us.
Yeah, awesome. Leanne, I'm going to ask you this one. Before fostering or adoption was on your radar, what did you assume it would be like?
Is that one of the questions I emailed you?
Nope.
Okay, so before it was on the radar, what did I assume it would be like? Okay. I assumed it would just be opening our home to a child in need. But the children are wounded deeply sometimes. And so it took a lot more of me than I thought it would. So, but it's been good, you know. We have seen some beautiful growth in all of the kids that we fostered and adopted. And at one point, Ariel called because they, you know, when you're going through an agency, there are always things that have to be done, kept up to date, whatever. And so they called and something about pet records, immunization records. So I said to Craig, okay, Ariel needs some immunization records. And he said, you know what? Let's just have him close our file for right now. We cannot adopt every child that comes into this home. So that's when we closed the file. But yeah, it's been a grand adventure.
Yeah. And Craig, what were some of the, if there were any, what were some of the fears or hesitations or misconceptions that you had before this process began?
You know, I guess one thing that I would say is we came into this whole idea of, we had certain assumptions that, you know, these kids would, you know, you bring them into your home, you treat them the same way that you've treated all your kids, and that everything would be the same. They would just naturally flow with the flow that came that was there when they got there. And in many cases that can be true, but we found out that it's not necessarily that way, right? These kids are different. These kids are unique. They're incredibly special. There's no argument about that. But just the thought of, okay, just because they're in this house doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to follow the path that everybody else followed. And so that's been an eye-opener for us. And again, it was an assumption that wouldn't necessarily be that way, but that's certainly the way it's turned out. And we're all unique, right? Every one of us is made in God's image, but we're all uniquely fitted for where God has us and where he's going to take us. And so that's where these kids are at. They're unique. We love them to pieces. And, you know, God's got this. He's had this since day one. And so I have no reason to believe that he's not going to continue what he has started.
Amen. All right, Kirsten, this one's for you. What was there any particular moment or conversation or scripture or experience that God used to stir your heart to take this step?
Yeah. I think I can't tell you the number. It was a Tuesday, December 2004. And I was home in the afternoon, which was unusual for Tuesdays. And I won't even tell you that. Got to see a clip of a documentary called The Dying Rooms. And it was a documentary about orphanages in China, where little girls who the orphanage determined were unadoptable because they had a birthmark, or they were too old, or they had a patch of skin that was the wrong color on their cheek. They would lock them in a room and starve them to death. And the documentary happened because some Americans, well, they might not even have been Americans, went in with cameras, tucked it, like secret cameras in a bag, and were given a tour of the orphanage, and they were taken into this room. And in the room, there was a little girl, maybe 7, 6, I don't know. You could see, literally, she was laying on her back, unclothed. You could see every bone in her body. And it broke me. Obviously, like, I can just tell you about it 20-some years later. And that night, I think I sobbed all day. And that night, laying in my bed, I yelled at God out loud, "Why don't you do something?" And out loud, he said, "Why don't you?" Which I then answered, because I'm kind of a smarty, "Because I'm not married." And he said, "Who cares?" And so I did.
Praise the Lord. Okay. Jen, I'm going back to you now. What was it that opened your eyes to the need for foster families and adoptive families?
Yeah, so I said in 2003, Karen and I went to Colorado Springs and took part in a weekend that I will never forget, but it was called If You Were Mine. It was put on by Family Life Today. And like I said, I wasn't on board with adoption. She was. She invited me to a weekend in Colorado Springs. I'm thinking, weekend without kids. I'm pretty slow, so I'm just be honest with you. By the end of the first night, I was a puddle, kind of like Kirsten is right now. Sorry. To hear the needs of kids around the world, and to understand that you're giving them an opportunity to come into your home and show them a picture of Jesus. And so we went back for the second part of the seminar on Saturday, and by the time we walked out the door, we knew that God had a plan for us to adopt. And so Karen set up an appointment with an adoption agency. We knew a family in the Ukraine, that missionary couple, and we thought we could do a Ukrainian adoption, go see George and Lois, be like, perfect. That was our plan. That wasn't God's plan. But we met with an agency. We had a meeting set up with a lady from the agency. She did Ukrainian adoptions. We drove to Denver. We had the 3 boys, our older 3 boys. And so we were going to go meet with the lady. And while we're over there, of course, we have the 3 kids. And so we thought, well, we'll do something fun for them while we're here. So we went to the zoo. And we walked through the zoo and did all the fun stuff and all the things that I don't like monkeys. And we're walking out of the zoo. I've got my youngest son, Austin, is in a stroller because he's a wanderer. So you had to keep track of him. And then the other 2 boys and my wife, and as we're walking out of the zoo, audibly in my head, now I know no one else heard it, but audibly in my head, I heard, "Your family's not all here." And I look around and I'm counting my boys, and I see my wife, and I think, well, they're right here. And again, "Your family's not all here." And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what you're saying. And I got it. My family wasn't complete yet. And that was 100% confirmation that we were on the right trail to do this adoption thing.
Karen, what do people often misunderstand about children in foster care?
Kind of what the Fuller said is they show up to your house and you think that you're going to love them and it's just going to fix all their problems. But they do come with a unique set of problems depending on the kiddo. When the Fab Four showed up, they had no common words for food that they didn't know what a green bean was. They didn't know how to play. They were feral. And so we spent time teaching them how to play with a toy, how to interact with each other in a way that was not hurting each other, how to sit at a table and have a meal. They had never done that. When we went out with them in a car and they saw a police car, they would hide and be scared because they had been used to hiding from the police. And you don't understand all that till you live with it. And so teaching things that you're not used to having to teach, loving them through crying when someone doesn't show up for a parent visit, hearing stories that are very uncomfortable to hear and knowing how to respond. You're praying a lot about, how do I even answer when they say, this is what happened to me, or we had to eat lotion before, or, they come with stories and how God will provide the things you need to do when you need to do it if you rely on Him.
Leanne, I hope you don't feel like I'm picking on you. What do you wish every Christian understood about foster care and the foster care system?
Okay, so first of all, the foster care system is not a Christian system. So you can't go into it thinking that you're going to have all sorts of, they don't have the same morals and ideals that you have. However, you go through, I don't know if y'all do now, but private agencies, and we went through Ariel, and they provided all sorts of support for us, which was so helpful. One simple thing was we had to go to monthly meetings, trainings, they called them, and so the kids are off in another room with caretakers, and you're with parents that are going through such similar things that you're going through. And so, the topic may be something about nurturing and rocking and how it's beneficial or whatever, but just being with other people and a lot of them are Christians, and so you're getting support from those people rather than, the system or whatever. So even though the foster care system is not necessarily a godly system, you still do get lots of support that was very helpful to us.
Okay, so now we get to the part where it's time to respond to the call. Kirsten, I'm going to ask you this: what kind of objections and excuses did you have to deal with and overcome in your journey?
You kind of have to go in, because of my situation, you kind of have to go in with this knowledge. I think that family, the way God has set it up, is super important. That every kid needs their mom and their dad. And so it was my first objection, right? I'm not married, so why would you even ask me to do this? And so I really had to deal with that I'm not adopting because I want to have children. I'm adopting because this is what God has put on my heart. It's two different things. And so it was something I wrestled with for weeks. I did a lot of talking to people who attended our church, asked their opinion, people that I had either grown up with or known for a while, asked them to pray about it, just wrestling through this whole, can you do it? Is it the right thing to do? And I know all the statistics about children and growing up in single homes. I teach them to parents. And so it wasn't anything I took lightly, but I had a couple of Christians who attended our church who told me that I was sinning, and that this decision to adopt while not being married was a sin, and that it very well could bring judgment against me and my children's ministry and our church. And it sideswiped me for a really long time. In the whole scenario, it really wasn't that long, but it was days and nights. I wasn't sleeping, and I was talking to people, and just trying to work it out. And again, God doesn't talk to me out loud all the time. You would think the way I'm going to tell you my testimony that he does, but again, I'm laying in bed, not sleeping, and wondering how I do this, because I really believe that this is the road God is leading me down. And he's like, why don't you read it in your Bible? Maybe you should open your Bible and just start reading. And I'm like, okay. And so I did, and very quickly, starting in Genesis, found the first adoption story. And I started in Genesis, it wasn't there. Got to the book of Exodus, and the first adoption that is talked about happens in the book of Exodus when Moses basically gets foster cared and adopted, right? By Pharaoh's daughter, who was not married. And God did great things with him, right, as a grown-up. And it kind of just gave me the freedom to just continue walking. And don't think I was like, okay, this is it, we're going. I pretty much tested God on every single step. I became Gideon. Tonight, I'm putting out the sheepcloth, and if it's wet in the morning, I will take another step. I did that a lot, because I just kept thinking, this really isn't about me, and if I wrong step this, I have ruined somebody's life. That's what, the responsibility of somebody else's life is on my shoulders right now. And so it would be like, okay, God, tomorrow I'm writing a check for $5,000. And that's a lot of money. And it's okay for me to not write it or not send it if this isn't the road I'm supposed to be walking down. You just have to show me it's not the right road. But I'm going to do it until you shut the door. And I spent months living like that. I'm sending in this paperwork, and if this isn't what I'm supposed to do, you got to shut the door. And so I just, every day, I live like Gideon for just a moment.
Karen, at what point did you realize that this was something God was calling your family to do?
My story's a little different. I grew up in a church home where there was a family that had adopted, and from a very early age, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I just knew in my heart from, I must have been 9. I'm going to adopt. And it wasn't me. God just placed that before me and put it in my heart, and then just had to get everyone on board. He had to get everyone on board, right?
Yeah, that's his problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm slow, right?
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
So, I don't know. God just gave it to me early.
Yeah. So I think I know the answer to this question, but Shannon, did you feel fully prepared when you started?
No. Do I need to say
How,
more?
what, so, I mean, it's kind of an obvious question. I don't know how anyone could, but how do you deal with that? How did you deal with that?
No, we were not prepared. No, we were not in any way. It's all but God. We walked into this completely blind. For me, anyways. I don't know. She was on board with it a long time before I was. But
She had a lifetime of
she had a
preparation.
lifetime of it. I'm like days in, and yeah, we were totally unprepared. But if you start walking in obedience to God, He'll prepare you. He doesn't call prepared. He prepares those He calls. That's what He did with us.
Okay.
The obedience certainly comes first.
Yeah. Copy, paste that to just about everything, right? Craig, this one's for you. I'm going to let you hand down a microphone to him. Looking back, what would you say to couples who think we could never do something like that?
Oh, yes, you can. That's a question that certainly floated through my mind as we were going down this journey. And our story actually starts a long time ago. When we first got married, we were living in Mexico, and we were, surrounded by kids, right? You can't get away from them. And we wanted to have kids, and we weren't able to have kids for some reason initially. And so we started down this adoption trail in Mexico, and we were that close to signing paperwork to get started adopting a little Mexican child while we lived down there. When we, twin girls, thank you. that you just got my spun out here. And then we found out that she was pregnant, so we kind of dropped that ball, and we had Sarah, we had Rebecca, and then we had Sarah, and then that was followed up with all these boys. We had 4 boys. And so now fast forward a number of years, and we are actually leaving back through those doors back there. And about where Janet has her table set up this morning, there was a lady that had been speaking in church. She sang a song. We ran into her out in the hallway. She was from Ariel. And we said, what do you need? What does this look like? And she says, well, here's how you get started. And so we sat there and we talked with her for a while. And we signed that line that morning, just, a letter or a signature of inquiry. And lo and behold, here we are all these years later. So, yeah, it's just, you just got to realize that, this isn't about us, right? This isn't about Leanne and I or our family. This is about reaching out and helping in our communities and in our neighbors. This stuff is all over. It's all around us, no matter where you go. There's needs everywhere. And that was an eye-opener for me personally, just understanding that, this isn't an isolated thing that happens in that city over there or this city over here. It's happening right here in our backyard. And it's still happening all these years later in our backyard. And so we just decided that morning, and we had been talking about it and praying about it for some time, but that was the moment of truth for us. This is where, okay, let's see where this goes.
Yeah. So on this topic, final question, Karen, what did obedience look like before confidence showed up?
Obedience was a lot like Kirsten just said. We did not have the money to do an adoption. We prayed. We can probably still not tell you exactly where all the funds came from, but we just kept doing the next thing, and the Lord showed up every single time. And then in foster care, obedience just felt like we're going to do this, and then allowing God to prepare us because we weren't prepared. I would say doing it gave us a larger picture of His grace and love and how we're just called to be His servants. And whichever thing He calls us to do, we need to do that with our whole hearts. And so we just kept doing the next thing and loving the next sometimes we had babies that were at our house for short times, and it was just changing sometimes it's changing diapers and loving them, taking to them a parent visit, and it's small things that turn into really big things. Them knowing about Christ for the first time, them learning what it feels like to have a dad. We had the Fab Four, none of them knew their dads, and they got to see a picture of what a dad looks like because Shannon was obedient to do that. They got to see what it was like to have a mom who showed up. They got to see what a family looks like because they didn't know. So, yeah.
So you march into this situation, and you're going through it, and it's like what I'm hearing a lot of is like, yeah, we're going to do this for somebody, and then something else happens. And so, Leanne, how did this experience stretch your faith? How did it change your marriage? How did it affect your parenting and your children? What impact did this have on all these other pieces?
Well, I go back to the question you asked earlier, were you prepared for this? Well, of course not, but are you prepared for anything in life? Sam and Cody, were you prepared for marriage when you dove in? No, people all have problems, and God gives you, if you're serving him, God gives you the strength to tackle this new adventure in life that he is putting before you. Now, what was your question?
It doesn't matter. No. So maybe the unforeseen ways, or that this affected your marriage, your kids, your parenting, your all of these other things.
Yeah, it did in a great amount affect our marriage, I think, because it threw us into an attitude of prayer. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? We need to pray about this. And our older kids were just amazing in how they stepped in and helped out. The video talked about Caleb, but Josiah was a huge help. Josiah bonded with Reuben as a baby in such a powerful way. Because I'm homeschooling still, all these kids. And Josiah had to take a year off after he graduated from high school because of illness. And so he was home a lot. And so he would just come out, grab Reuben, take him into his bedroom, and play with him, keep him busy so that I could continue schooling Isaac and the others. And so, it was such a growing experience for Isaac too. He is replaced. He was, in his mind, the center of the family because he was the baby. And he grew so much in having to nurture these kids that were in our family. And so, yeah, our family grew in leaps and bounds.
Yeah. Okay, Shannon, give it to us straight. What was the hardest part of fostering and adopting? I'm going to ask you that one, dude.
I'm not sure how to answer that. So with the Fab Four, two of them, I said, was after a year, two of them were placed in other homes, and we had the oldest, and we had the third boy still living with us, and it went to a court hearing where a judge was going to make a final decision on where these kids were going to live, and the hardest day of any day that I can remember in my life was the day that the judge, so number 3, sorry, told you.
That's right.
Karen shared earlier, we had the Fab Four, all 4 of them, same mom, all 4 of them had different dads. 3 of those kids shared the last name of their father. Abel, which was the number 3 boy, didn't have his dad's last name. He had his mom's last name. So he didn't have that little nugget of a father even on his name. And so I sat at a Tres Dias weekend and I heard another pastor talk about foster care and adoption and how we're called to love orphans and widows, and to be able to give a boy a last name, man, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And we wanted so bad to adopt Abel into our home and give him a last name. And the day came that the judge made that call that he's going back to the grandparents' home where they were actually at before they got placed in our house because they didn't provide a safe place for them to live. Those kids, 2 of them ended up going back to those grandparents' home. That was hard. She called me on the phone, and I could barely even understand what she was talking about. But I've never lost a child of my own to death, but I have lost that little piece of Abel. Got plucked out of our lives like a tooth that got pulled that really didn't need to get pulled. You ever had that? That would suck, and this sucked. That was the hardest day.
Yeah. What about you, Craig?
The licensing for our family took a little bit longer than I had anticipated, mostly because of our particular situation, because there's rules in that whole foster care world that says you have to have, so many square feet per kid or per person in the house, bedroom space and all that. So we literally had to wait until Jacob went off to school. And so then that took us to the next level. By the end of the year, we were officially licensed. And on January the 10th, we got our first placement. And as part of the foster care system, a licensing procedure, they had asked us, we are an agency that specializes in foster care, but every once in a while, it's very rare, but a child will become adoptable. Would you be open to that idea? And we both looked at each other and we said we certainly would pray about it. We'd look into it. Absolutely. Well, the very first placement we got was a young man by the name of Tacoma. He never left. He's still around. And I chuckle about that today, and I think, that's interesting. But it's a different world, right? It's just understanding that, like I said earlier, it's everywhere. It's all around us. And so the hardest part for me has been just understanding this broken world that we live in is in such dire need. You don't have to go very far to find the answers, the question, I should say, that is there somebody nearby that needs our help? The answer is unequivocally yes. It's probably across the fence from you. And so, for us, I guess that was the biggest eye-opener, just realizing that there is such need. It is literally surrounding us. And so don't let the amount of need overwhelm you. Just understand that there's processes, there's mechanisms in place to help. And, we can all, like you said earlier, Janet, we can all plug in some meaningful way. There was no CarePortal available when we first started this journey. And, bunk beds would have been real handy, right, early on. But, we just had to call friends and neighbors who came through. So there's all kinds of ways that we can all become involved. But so don't let the enormity of the problem or the enormity of the situation bear down too hard, because God's got this. He is in such control of all these things that we think are big and unsurmountable. He is the one who ultimately moves his people around and directs their steps.
Amen. Amen. Kirsten, what have you learned about God through this journey?
A lot. I think probably the biggest thing I learned was that he never walked away. Like Reagan and I, she's 20 now, and she's living in Denver, and that's weird. But we get to talk on the phone, and a couple weeks ago she said, I think I made a mistake. And I said, why do you think that? And she, whatever, tells me. And I'm like, Reagan, we prayed about this. You prayed about this. And throughout your whole entire life, people have prayed for you. And we have prayed about decisions being made. And God has always come through, right? He's either it's been a resounding no, you're not doing that, or it has been, open door after open door after open door about things that we prayed for. Like, as soon as I decided, yep, I'm doing this, and this is what God told me to do, the very first thing I did was sent out 20 letters to family members and people from our church who I knew would pray, like faithfully, not just like, help Kirsten, but like would pray every day. And I just said, I'm not going to send these often, but I'm going to send prayer requests to you by mail, and I'm just asking that you would pray. And right now we're praying for a baby that maybe like hasn't even been born yet, right? Like maybe, and so I did that. That was like the beginning of 2005. Sent out prayer requests. I would say my paperwork is going to immigration services because Reagan is from Kazakhstan, and so all of that clearance had to be done before I could bring her back in. And I had gotten on to old school boards, and it was taking people 2 or 3 years to get immigration service clearance. Like, that's a really long time, and I am like, I don't know if I can wait that long. I mean, of course you can, but, right, 3 months. I got mine back in 3 months. And people are praying, and then I'm like, well, now we're waiting to be assigned a baby. And part of the reason why I chose Kazakhstan was because you could adopt a baby that needed to be adopted at 6 months. And there's a lot of things, but the country closed in October. Kazakhstan closed to adoption for like 6 months, where they were no longer accepting, they were no longer finalizing adoptions, and which that was about the time I thought I was going to Kazakhstan. And so, so we just asked people to pray about it, right? And so my dad and I flew to Kazakhstan the following August, and we met this little girl, Elmira Abatova, and she was living in the children's hospital. And here are all the things that he answered in a short amount of time, right? She was living in a children's hospital. She'd been born 8 weeks early. She would not have even been born had I gone that October before. She'd been living in a children's hospital pretty much all of her life. So this whole time that people are praying for her, she's living in the children's hospital. The week that my mom and I are supposed to come home, we've spent 2 months almost in Kazakhstan. We get a phone call from America from my adoption agency, and they said, the United States of America is not going to let Reagan into the country because they think that she might have HIV. Because the children's hospital that she was living in had an HIV, it was a scandal. A doctor was buying HIV blood, and they were administering it to children. 124 children ended up with HIV and died in the time that Reagan was in the hospital through blood transfusions. And so, got a hold of my dad, who was back in the States, and prayers went out across the nation, and Reagan's test came back negative a couple of days later, and we got to come home. And it was like just through her whole 20 years, it has just been prayer request after prayer request after prayer request answered, right? Like, she's smart, she loves Jesus, she's following God, and Leanne said it too, right? You just pray. If this is what God has for you, then just talk to him, because he's already making the way, right? He's already decided what your road looks like and how you're going to get there. And he has put a church family, that's what it is. Like, I often say, I did not raise Reagan. Like, she lived in my home, but she was raised by a very big family, right? My mom, my dad, she has an aunt and uncle, but she has like 2 Uncle Erics and an Uncle Rob and an Aunt Tracy and Grandma Pat. And like, she was raised by this huge family, and they are all people who prayed for her throughout her life. Yeah. And he has answered over and over. He's so faithful.
Yeah. Praise God. Whew. I have so many questions, you guys. But one of the reasons we're doing this is because I want us to see as a church body how every single one, and you've heard this a little bit, how every single one of us can be a part of this in one way or another. And everyone has a part to play on this team in the lives of, especially in the lives of our brothers and sisters in this church who are in this ministry, who are doing this, who are going into this battle, and this is super important. So I want to ask, I do want to spend a little bit of time on this in terms of when we talk about how the church how the church gets involved. How do we do this? I mean, folks, this is how Rome was turned upside down. It was Christian families in the Roman Empire going to the mountainside, saving children, and no one else was doing it. And eventually everyone saw the difference that Jesus made, and it changed the world. It changed the world. So in doing this, Karen, I'm going to ask you this question: how can the church sometimes unintentionally make this harder?
Well, sometimes we show up at church and we don't look like every other family, right? We have a crying kiddo, we have a kid having a meltdown, we have it's not all pretty sometimes. And sometimes people look at you like, why don't you have it together? But I don't think that happened a lot. I mean, I think it happened. I remember Jane coming to my house one day, and Aubrey was having a large fit, and she's like, does this happen often? And I was like, I'm not even noticing. Yes, it happens often. But I also look around this room, and there's people in this room who made it intentionally easier as well, right? They gave money. They showed up when I was exhausted. Amber and Katie showed up when I was about to fall apart and spent a day with the kids so we could get away. My older kids showed up every day helping with whatever. Levi was an able whisperer often. All of them supported us. And so I think just think about giving grace to people as they work through whatever mess it looks like we're having.
Yeah.
We had people show up, our washer broke down. We had Christian friends show up with a washer, take the old washer out, carry an old washer upstairs, set it up. We had people show up with meals. So I don't think the church ever intentionally does anything, but sometimes unintentionally, I think it's just why does this look so messy? Because it does.
It is messy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's okay.
And that's why it looks that way.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you kind of touched on this. I'm going to open this up to everybody. What are practical ways people can support foster and adoptive families, even if they never foster and adopt? What are those ways? What does that look like?
Well, these two ladies stole my closing thunder, where I was going to say, this is not about us, right? We're just families that are up here talking about this because we're mixed up with it. But I look out across the room here this morning, and I can see countless faces of people who have come alongside of all of us, the aunts and the uncles and the brothers and the sisters, and who have made such a tangible difference in the lives of these kids. They have loved on these kids the same way that we loved on them, and unintentionally or intentionally, it's happened. And so our kids are the recipient of love that you all have shown them through the years. I mean, this is not just a week event or a month event. This is a lifelong event, right? This is life-altering, life-changing from this point forward. And you all, I mean, I could name story after story after story just looking around at the faces and say, wow, you showed up with a meal. You showed up with a wash machine. We didn't get a wash machine, by the way. But we had numerous other ways that you all have blessed us. And so we are so thankful for all of you to step up. And, when I think about the whole idea of, in our case, fostering and then adopting, we're all adopted, right? Every single one of us here this morning who knows Christ, we have been adopted into this family, this heavenly family, this Father who his love knows no ends. His love knows no end of patience. He is, immovable. He is unshakable. And you all have shown that to us and our kids, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because we could not have done this without you. So if you want to applaud somebody this morning, give yourselves a cheer and a hand, because you have done it for us, and we thank you so much.
Yeah.
I was going to say something about Kirsten. So Kirsten was always an encouragement to me, right? And she has been one of Aubrey's people her whole life. And she made, if there was an event that was going to be difficult or challenging for Aubrey, there was always a plan and how that was going to happen. And she would say to me, listen, you don't have to worry about it. We'll figure it out and I'll do it. You don't have to be at everything. And so that gave me sometimes to breathe and take a step back, because I knew if Kirsten said she was going to handle it, Aubrey was going to be happier that Kirsten was handling it than if I was there, because she's one of your people for sure. Thank you.
She's one of my people. I think as a church and as people maybe who are considering fostering or adopting, I think, or if just being a church member and sitting next to somebody who is, sometimes we think that God called us to fluff, right? God just called us to do the easy stuff, soft stuff. But he didn't. God called us to do hard stuff. And it wasn't so that we would be heroes or like people that sit on a stage that everybody looks at. It wasn't about that. It is about him, that he would be glorified through this. And I like, out of anything that could have possibly happened in my life in the last 20 years, there is nothing more that makes me know that God has been working in my family, right? There's nothing, not even through children's ministry and the kids that I work with, there's nothing more that makes me know and see that God is working through my family. And I think you got to go with that, right? Like, there are hard moments, and because I do what I get to do, I have had the privilege to work with a lot of families who are foster families, and it is hard to be a mom and a dad in the foster system. It is heartbreaking, and it is not about them. And so it's people who are willing to say, this is going to break my heart. Like, you just got to know that right up front, and I'm going to do it anyways. And I'm going to do it knowing that God is leading the way. And as a church family, you got to, pray, encourage, support. Take them out for coffee, take their kids out for coffee, whatever it takes to help everybody be able to walk through it and everybody to see Jesus, right? It's what we signed up for, to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And it looks a little different than other families.
And I'll tell you real quick. We've shared a lot of it's hard, it's difficult, but it's also the best, right? And none of us sitting up here would go back and undo it to have an easier, cushier life. If you're thinking about it, do it. Ask one of us. It's the biggest joy, and it's hard, but do it.
Awesome. That was actually going to be my last question. What would you say if somebody, yeah, so you said it. That's awesome. Well, can we thank these guys? Oh. And one final word.
I was just going to add one more thing here. Our situation is a little different than Shannon and Karen's and Kirsten's because, they did the foreign adoption, the foreign adoption avenue. We started off doing foster care, which morphed into adoption for us, but they were domestic kids, right? Is that the right term? Yeah. Domestic kids? Born in the USA? That's true. So if you've got any questions, what does the foreign adoption process look like versus the domestic adoption process, please question us because we can answer some of those questions. It's definitely different. There was no airfare involved, so we didn't get to hop on an airplane to go visit anybody. But it's just a little different process, and the end result is the same, right? I mean, that's the end goal. But the way to get there just looks a little bit different. So bear that in mind too. It's not necessarily you have to dish out thousands and thousands of dollars. If that's what God's calling you to do, that's what you do. In our case, it was a little bit different. So that's all I have to say.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Oh, we'll get it in a second. Yeah. Actually, we will. This will be in the way of the worship team, but I'll just move aside. Yeah. Thank you. So, just in closing, I want to say we have just a tremendous opportunity. A year ago, we started this process, got our church signed up for CarePortal. We got a few, there was several people that signed up to be on this list. And just to let you know, here's just functionally, here's how it happens. A need comes in, and it gets written up in that system, automatically gets emailed to everybody who is signed up for the church. And it might show up and it might say, here's the need, $65. For a parent to be able to go see their child, needs a ticket, and if you want, you just click on a button and you can support that. It might say 100, it might say 750, it might say 1,200, but to respond to that, you can be whatever part of that you want to. You got $10 a month to throw at this, great. You can pick the thing you want to put $10 on. Or if you've got more, less, whatever, you can get involved in whatever you want to get involved in. So what I'm telling you is I don't think there's any reason that every single one of us can't sign up to be someone who is supporting people who are doing this work. We've got people in our church who are fostering to adopt and working to adopt. And I'm telling you, some people talk about me as like full-time Christian ministry. That is full-time ministry. And I want you to know, if you're in that, if you're in that work, we so appreciate you and love what you're doing. And I don't want you to think for a second that you are alone. That I want you to know that this church is behind you. We just need to know. That's all we need. We just need to know. And I know there's so many people in this church that want to come alongside, want to help, want to encourage. Just need to know. And so I want to put that out there. Don't just rush out today, but get on that list. It's not a contract. You're not signing up for what you're just going to get information. And so I just want to encourage you to get on that list.